thanks for agreeing to join us on this call. And it's, just to let folks know why we're doing this. I think it was last weekend I was in, caught in the media frenzy of what's happening in the planet, and I recognize that there's not a lot of places for people to go and hear from real people about what's happening in our lives. That's how we're dealing with what's going on, but how we're living, and there's comparatively so few people are really have anything. They don't even know anybody that has a virus, so we're just all kind of locked up in our houses watching the tsunami come, and so, but there's so much more possibility in this moment, and a lot of the people I've spoken to this week are people that are more around looking inside on a spiritual basis, finding that stillness, recognizing that the mind is just telling us story, and the mind loves drama and loves to create problems. It's always looking for, and when I think of you, and you and I have known each other for, I'm going to say 10 years.
Mm-hmm. I think 9 years in 8 days. I did my weekend was April 11th, 2011.
Wow.
So we would have met the day
each other before that.
No, I don't know, dude, because I came down to San Francisco, and the first time I met you was in the apartment you flew in from Bali. I don't think I had met you prior to that. You flew in from Bali. We were in this apartment in the middle of San Francisco, and
up on the roof. We went on the roof and everything, and that was
I think that was April 10th. So we're a week short of 9 years.
Well, it's been a pleasure to be, a part of your life and watch the changes for us both, and you've seen me struggle with trying to get everything my way, and and I've really surrendered to I've surrendered to the fact that from my mind, I don't know. When I'm in my mind, I'm often in fear, and I'm often wanting things to be a certain way, and the beautiful thing that's happened for me after finally letting that business go was that I recognized that the only place that I want to live is in this connection with the oneness, and be living intuitively in each moment, as opposed to driving the ship out of fear, or shoulds or shouldn'ts, or rights or wrongs. And I've watched you in business and over the years, and be with so many great spiritual teachers, like John, and I'm sure others that when I speak of John, I mean John DeMartini, and I know you've combined this with your offering to your clients. So what are you saying now? How are you helping your clients? Has it changed? Is it, how have you adapted to what's happening, and what advice do you have for our viewers, this morning?
It's an interesting question. I have the opportunity to observe a number of different business communities in their approach to handling crisis. And I see business owners are really, there's a lot of messaging out right now about pivot, how we need to pivot as business owners, how we need to change our messaging and speak in a way that is congruent with what's going on for our customers at this time. And I see that clearly in principle. And I also see that there's a level to that communication that is lacking long-term perspective. I have in my business chosen to be very, very thorough in creating a long-term vision that we work backwards. And quarter over quarter, we embody this ritual of planning and this ritual of choosing 5 major priorities that we're going to focus on as a company. And we did our quarterly planning for Q2 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Like, the crisis was well underway 2 weeks ago when we did our planning. And I have a structure for this planning. It is built in a way where we go to the most long-term focus and we reverse engineer that backwards to be clear that we're choosing quarterly rocks or priorities that align with that. And when we got to the quarterly rocks, the choices for our priorities this quarter, I don't perceive were significantly deviant from the rocks I would have picked had there been no crisis. And so that to me has sort of been a blessing and a curse, because part of me has FOMO. I feel like I'm missing out on something. Is there some magical opportunity here that Alexander's missing out on that I could capitalize on during this crisis, or that I'm somehow ignorant to? But then there's also this other side of me that has like relief in that my principles are being tested, and my connection to the long-term vision for my business has put me in a place where it feels that pivot does not necessarily appear to be necessary in terms of what we do every day, in terms of my plans, in terms of my priorities. So my messaging to my clients has been to acknowledge the circumstance, but most importantly, what's real about it to them. Like, what's real about it to you? Because you can get lost in the, like you mentioned, in the drama and in the shit that's happening in the planet we have no control over. We cannot manipulate or change in any way. It doesn't actually impact us except in terms of our emotional responses. But then there's parts that may, in fact, influence us and impact us. If I was running a restaurant in Calgary, I'd be having a very different conversation with you. I'm not running a restaurant. I run a service business to coaches and consultants and course creators and information product creators all over the world who are not going out to eat, right? They keep coming in to eat. So I don't have some of the more tangible changes or more imminent changes to my environment. And in that way, I'm blessed. So we each have an environment that's changing, and like any other test, like any other emotional challenge, like any other distraction or any other circumstance that we might want to use as an excuse to throw the plan in the fire, the plan still matters. And it would be prudent to make short-term adaptations with the long-term vision in mind, which I would be saying no matter what. It's just like this crisis creates a very visceral opportunity for us to look at how we tend to throw the plan in the fire to react to what we perceive as a crisis. But my reminder has been that my clients tend to react as if their life is a crisis in exactly the same way as they're reacting to this crisis. And so who are we to say what crisis is real? Right. So,
Yes.
so my job is to pierce through that and to just have a very clear conversation about what justification are we creating to avoid what responsibilities. Like, the ego doesn't want to be trapped by long-term plans, and long-term planning is what's going to get people out of this in a sustainable way, I think.
Well, you are the master of the long-term plan. So are you doing meetings with your clients all on Zoom? Or are you going to have you often do every quarter you do a weekend?
Yeah, we're going to go for full virtual. I mean, I canceled my hotel stay. I literally couldn't it would be irresponsible.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But I already do a ton of broadcast production. I mean, I have a television studio in my basement. We have dozens of thousands of dollars of broadcasting infrastructure. I feel like in many ways I've been preparing my whole life for this moment. I've been telling people for, I think, 5 years that they need to be producing content, and they need to be comfortable on camera, and they need to know how to speak into a lens, and they need to know how to articulate on video, and they need to know how to present in a room, and they need to have the capability of creating value through technology. And the statements I've made, which are in many ways platitudes, it's like, if you don't produce content, you'll be irrelevant because the market's going to move on. And what we're finding now is it's a very, you literally can't go outside. If you don't produce content, you've immediately become irrelevant. And so, you know, we're putting together virtual workshops. We're doing the things we would do anyway to support our clients and to help them navigate this. And I've got the technology and the practice and the discipline to do it. So,
so are you doing? You have the ability to help people with, you know, your clients. Some of them may be stressed.
Yeah.
And, you know, are you having one-on-ones where you're actually helping them to discover their inner power? Are you directing them towards some books that they could read to find out, you know, who they are beyond the drama?
To a degree, it's a bit like herding cats, as you can imagine. But I mean, again, this is one of those things that, I mean, for me, it's, of course, I have this conversation. This is the conversation I've been having regardless of the crisis. And so I'm continuing the conversation. We put together a 3-hour virtual workshop specifically to help our clients reconnect to long-term vision while navigating short-term crisis. And yes. I return to what's tried and true, which is that our behavior demonstrates what we value. And the mind is quick to move into belief about things that matter. It'll make claims. It says things like, this is important to me. I want this, and I'm going to create this future, and these goals matter. And in many cases, we're surprised when our behavior doesn't line up with those things we say. And so I have, as a discipline, we do this every quarter at Command and Conquer. We do this every quarter internally with my team. We do this over and over and over again, and I'll continue to do it probably till I die, which is we apply John Demartini's value determination process. And we acknowledge that, of course, I hear you. The short term, you think it requires your attention, and it may, but let's give it attention with what's meaningful and important in mind. Because when we fill our life with what we think we have to do, we end up, it's like this magnet for chaos. Like when we fill our life with what we think we need to do or ought to do, we've got to do, we've supposed to do, we have to do it. Coronavirus says so. Like, my environment demands this, Alexander. Like, are you crazy? Of course we have to do this. And I have a really visceral example. I did a full day planning session with one of my clients yesterday. And within the first 15 minutes of the call, my client attempted literally to say, Alexander, I get it. You have a structure for quarterly planning, and normally we would follow it. But in this circumstance, I think it warrants doing whatever the fuck my impulsive mind in this moment feels is urgent. And my response to him was, you can do whatever you like, but if you choose to throw the plan in the fire, I will remove myself from this call. If you're going to go like imbibe your short-term impulse in this moment and throw what I know will work away, do what you want to do. I'm just going to exit. His choice was to continue. So we continued. And the process that we follow for quarterly planning, whether it's in a VIP day or whether it's with our clients at our quarterly workshops, is we start with the end in mind. We start with what's most meaningful and important to the visionary or the CEO. We do the value determination process, and we reveal a hierarchy of meaning. It's the things that if they could do 100% of the time, if they found a way to delete, delegate, defer, or just get someone else to take it away, we would do just this very short list of things. It's what's actually meaningful versus everything else that we must do. And we take that and we turn it into a long-term mission statement. We take that and we turn it into a 25-year goal. And we take that and we turn it into 3-year thrusts. And we take that and we turn them into 1-year initiatives. And we take that and we ask, what do we want to do this quarter to move in that direction? And at the quarterly level, I said, we're making 2 lists. This was like after 7 hours of that process. We get to the end and I'm like, we're going to make a list of everything you think you have to do. And we're going to make a list of everything that you would love to do in this quarter to move the business forward with an acknowledgement of the circumstance and to navigate this crisis. Like, reality is reality. We're going to work with that. But let's ask 2 questions instead of 1. Instead of just what do we have to do? What would you love to do? And this is one of those things where it's like, if you hear me say it, it might land and you might go, okay, it's fine. But if you actually sit down and try to hold yourself or your family or your business accountable, it's almost uncomfortable for people to answer the "I'd love to do this" question. Like, it's like we can look right at it and we don't. It's like, oh, it's too bright, I don't want to see it. It's like looking at the sun. Like, people will just avoid it for some reason. Maybe it's self-worth issues, whatever. We could go down that rabbit hole. But what I found in that moment was the list of what we'd love to do was like, after 30 minutes of this exercise, there was like 6 or 7 things. And in the list of things we have to do, there was like 20 things. And so then I said, we're going to now pick 5 things. We're going to focus on this quarter. We're going to pick our 5 quarterly rocks. And what I want to challenge you to take a look at is anything we think we have to do actually something we have to do? Like, let's just check, because you came into this 7-hour VIP day feeling like you knew what you had to do this quarter. And that's what this list represents. And let's look at the I'd love to do list and see what out of that list is actually going to move the business forward. And we ended up with 4 of the I'd love to do's and 1 of the have to do's, which is the great fucking confusion that people have. The have to do voice is so compelling. It seems so real. It seems so affirmative. Alexander, I can touch it. The fucking news is telling me this. Of course I have to do it. Isn't it obvious? And my answer is no. It's not obvious to me, actually. What I'm concerned about is what's meaningful to you, not what's obvious. And meaningfulness takes work. And so I just hold that torch. I just feel like that's my job. Like, regardless of whether it's a little crisis or a giant crisis, my role, my identity in life is proving still in this moment to be a voice of not reason, but to be a voice of meaning. Like, what is meaningful? Let's let out all the bullshit. Say everything you think you want to say. I will hear you and I will hold space for you, and you can have your emotions. And when you're done, let's just check. Is that actually what's going to be meaningful? And most of the time, what we think is meaningful is not. It requires introspection. And so, I mean, I think that's what people should do. But I mean, if everyone did this, I'd be out of a job and I wouldn't have my role in the universe. So I get it. Like, I get it that it's my job. It's not obvious. And as a messenger, like, this is an example. It's just one example out of many. 10 years from now, your wife is going to leave you, or your kid is going to get injured, or your business is going to fail, or you're going to stub your toe on the fucking couch and you're going to feel like life is a crisis. And if you don't practice now, just like any other crisis, if you don't practice looking for what's meaningful in the heart of a crisis, you will not find it. It's not going to just like show up. Hey, what's up? I'm Miracle Magic Universal Man, here to make life easy and show you on a silver fucking platter what's meaningful to you. That's not how this game works. And so I think we have a duty to look for that.
It's funny that although we have different language, we're kind of in the same arena. What I'm helping people to do is find that voice inside of them the same way, and the stillness, the who are you really, and outside of who we think we are, maybe the currently unemployed, the currently financially challenged, lots of people are home with their wife and kids and wondering how did that happen, and building little offices to hide out, but they're caught up in the drama of that, just like you said, and so sometimes we call it purpose, sometimes what I'm helping people to see is that there's something beyond that spin that's happening with the mind, just like you said.
Oh, it's very convincing.
Yes.
It's very convincing. Like, look how real I am.
In a way, nothing's changed, because out there isn't, we've perceived a certain level of certainty in the system, and in with our work, with our jobs, if we're working for somebody, and we've never really had certainty. The truth is that going out the door in the morning, we could slip and fall and break our hip, and that's that's it. We are laid up for 6 months on a hospital bed. So it just, there's no real certainty, never has been. And so when it's revealed, and actually the planet seems to have taken us all upside down and given us a shake, you know, the opportunity is just exactly what you're saying, is to find what's real, what's real for you, what's real for me. And you know, my conversation's more on a, I don't like to call it spiritual, because even spiritual is a concept, you know. So it's more about that, finding that quiet place inside of us that's where knowingness does reside.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not stuck in right and wrong, or good or bad, or left and right, or up or down.
I mean, no matter where we think we're going, we will arrive back here with ourselves.
Yes.
Like, I'm 32 as of February, and I've been an entrepreneur since 12, and I've been a real business owner since I was 18, and I could create a corporation at the registry. And I love to work hard. I'm a hard worker. I will work and work and work, and I will do everything that's necessary. I was working through our master services agreement with a friend of mine who's a lawyer this morning, and we're going through the document. He's like, "Look at you." He's like, "You think like a lawyer." I'm like, "I know. I think like a lawyer. I think like a tax accountant. I think like a bookkeeper. I think like a media producer. I think like an IT guy. I think like a software developer. I think like a show producer. I think like a live stream broadcaster. I think like a designer. I can Photoshop. I
You
can do
think
all
like a
these
spiritual
things.
teacher.
I think like a spiritual teacher. I'm a goddamn public speaker, whatever. All these fucking labels. Like in such a short amount of time, I've done more than many people do in their lifetimes. And I've been doing this to look for meaning, and I haven't found it anywhere but here. I was on a journey with a few of my closest friends a few nights ago, and I just kept arriving back at myself. Like, in everything I've done in my life, everything I thought mattered. Money, when I didn't have it, I really thought it mattered. Now I do have it. Guess what? I haven't changed, right? Business success, customers, and demand. I remember in 2013 when I shut down a failing business, I couldn't pay my bills if my life depended on it. I had more overheads than I could afford. I was running out of cash. I was paying my team to listen to me teach them shit. And I felt like, man, if only I could create demand for my services, life would be better, because instead of having to chase people, try to convince them to give me work, I would always have work to do. Well, guess what? I have more work than I can do. I cannot hire people fast enough. I've got unlimited demand to produce revenue and to grow my business, and I have $1 million company. And guess what? I'm no different. I've solved the problems of all this bookkeeping and building audiences online and knowing how to market and acquire customers and joint venture partners and all this stuff. And guess what? It still doesn't, the meaning isn't out here. Like, the meaning isn't in those things that I think that I'm accomplishing. Each of those things creates new problems. Each of them creates new drama. Each of them creates new questions. And if I really get present with what matters to me, it's like, in this moment in my life, I want to sit and be present in my body, experience my feelings, and ask myself what meaning I'm creating and what do I want and where do I want to go. And any other question puts the authority on something outside of me. And I've also observed that that's what most people want. They want someone else to tell them what to do. They want their environment to give them purpose. They want meaning to somehow come down from the stars or from God or from a religion or from some outside voice, so that they can feel like certain, or so that they can feel in control, or they can feel like, thank God, it's like the universe finally wrote me my prescription. I know what to do. It's an uncomfortable question to step into authority and to say, I'm the creator. What do I want? And to answer the question. And so my questions in the past have been, what does it mean? Who will I be when I create X, Y, Z? Like, will life be better, easier, more fulfilling, like whatever, when I have money, when I have a business? And what I'm finding is life has the meaning that I create. Life has the meaning that I choose to imbue it with. And I can wait for it to happen to me, and it will. Or I can be the meaning that I want to create, which you could write on a fucking painting and put on your wall. And to someone who hasn't had those experiences, it won't mean anything to them. You know, like it just doesn't mean. We have to try to open the cracks of consciousness and like slip in some questions and help people just ask
Yeah.
what okay, you've lost your job, fine, put all that aside, get present. What do you want to create with your life? You got to keep your job and your business is challenged and you need to keep your employees working, fine, put that aside. What do you want to create with your life? You don't need to wait for the environment to answer that question. But any opportunity in your environment creates the opportunity to ask the question. So we'll go around this fucking circle for as long as it takes for people to recognize that the path to their own growth sits within themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That at no particular moment will it become convenient for you to stop the train and decide, right? What do I want and what will I create without a reason, without justification, without some external circumstance defining that reality for me in this moment? Where am I going? Who am I going to be? And what meaning am I going to project into the world? And that you'll be with that. We'll be here back at myself. Look at that. I'm back at myself. Look at that. I'm back at myself. I can go on a journey and it can be long, or I can go on a journey and it can be short. But no matter where I think I'm going to arrive back at myself. So we might as well start right here. This is just another opportunity. Let's start right here. What is meaningful to you? What are you creating? What does it mean? And who are you going to share it with? Like, it's just life. It's just life. It might look like a lot of different things, but we're going to grow or we're not going to grow. We have the choice.
So you find that John's meaning exercise, the value exercise,
Mm-hmm.
it has been really helpful for people to get to that, to release a lot of what it's been around them, you know, the noise,
Mm-hmm.
and drop into who they really are.
Yeah, because no matter what I have thought and no matter what authority I've tried to please, my behavior has wisdom in it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been demonstrating to myself what's important to me my entire life. I've been demonstrating it. What is it saying? Like, what has my behavior been telling me? If I've been exercising 7 days a week for 7 years straight, and I have a belief that I shouldn't exercise, or in the inverse, I haven't been exercising and I think I should. Who's right? Which voice is right? My behavior speaks so loudly I can't hear the words.
Yeah,
right?
Of course, yes. You're
So,
doing it. What's happening is what needs to happen.
Yeah, which is a tough pill to swallow to someone who's trying to please authority figures, because we build up these stories like, I should be this way because I've made a promise or a commitment to an authority figure, that if I recognize the brilliance and the genius in my own behavior as my own truth, then not only will I wake up to what's actually important to me, I will defy the authority whom I'm attempting to please.
We have to, absolutely have to.
Well, you don't. You could die. You
No,
could
of course,
slowly,
yes,
you
yeah.
could slowly succumb to entropy, and your body will decay, and you'll eventually decompose, because you're good. The universe will allocate resources to those who use those resources wisely towards some archetype of meaning. So, like, if you choose not to put your life to good use, your life will be given to someone who will. Right? So we do not. And here's the other truth that I'm observing: people have no obligation to do what I'm telling them. We have no obligation to grow. If you don't want to grow, fine, go ahead, fucking die. That's your choice. You don't have to use the resources that you've been given. You do not have to. You've been given the opportunity, choose not to use them. That's your choice. Go off into the night. Those resources will be redistributed by the universe in the law of thermodynamics. Your fucking particles will decompose. Those electrons and neutrons and positrons will go out into the field, and something else that's growing in life will pick them up. And that thing is always going. That mission, the universe is always recycling the resources from where it's going to be used to create life away from that where it's basically stopped growing and has begun to die.
Yes, John taught us nothing's lost.
It's totally fine. But if you want to put your life to good use, AKA towards something meaningful, according to who? You get to decide. If you do choose to do that, you'll acquire resources. Resources will attract to you, right? But the universe isn't going to give the resources to an entitled fucking person who thinks that they should have them because they're trying to fulfill a fantasy and a belief system that isn't truly who they are and doesn't have any meaning in it. Meaningfulness is the root of all growth. And you have to awaken to that. And in order to see what's meaningful to you, you have to somehow shut out the voice of the authority figure. And for most people, it's really hard, right? Most people, it's really hard. They don't even know the voice they think they're listening to is an authority figure to begin with. Most of the time, they don't even have an awareness that what they think they should do isn't actually logical. Most people think, of course I should do. I live in a life where shoulds are the norm. I live in a life where imperatives are exactly how I'm guided to grow and learn in my life. My teachers taught me that. My parents taught me that. The government teaches me that. The tax service teaches me that. Everyone teaches me that. So of course that's how the life works. Well, it's not how life works. That's the challenge that we get to rise to if we want. And so if we choose to, we can approach this in two ways. We can observe our own behavior and appreciate ourselves for who we are, and then begin to honor that behavior, and eventually we'll move away from the authority. Or we can identify the authority and we can kick them off the fucking pedestal and we can move on with our life. You can do one or both. And if we do choose to, then we begin to empower our expression and we can become more refined and nuanced in our expression of that meaningfulness, because what's important to us starts as a blunt fucking object, right? It starts as, I think I like sports. Okay, great. What sport? You pick a sport. You play the sport. You realize you don't like it. You do like it. There's layers and we unfold them and we unfold them. But guess what? You don't get to see those layers till you step into that identity and you start to do it. So the future mystery available to us is inaccessible without action. We have to line up our action and our intention with what we've already demonstrated is important. The best way to do that is to look at your behavior and to acknowledge, like, I know I told my dad I was going to go do this 50 fucking times, but I haven't. At what point do I make that mean, I guess I don't want to? Like, that's the thing. At what point do I realize if I've made a promise, a commitment, or an affirmation or statement of identity, a proclamation, or some kind of goal more than 3 times and it hasn't happened, my response to you is, it probably doesn't fucking matter. It probably doesn't. Maybe just let it go. And then ask the question, well, how would I pick a better goal? The best goals that you can pick are the ones that you already have behavioral evidence to support you're likely to do.
I love what you're saying, because I've found mine clearly and resisted it. I watched myself resist for years, thinking that I was supposed to be successful, and with my retail store and all
in
the
a
identity.
particular way. Yeah.
Yes, and this is what I love to do. This is me, and it's always been. I mean, you've watched me for 9 years. I love being at the front of the room. I love to teach. I love to share. I love to listen and be there, compassionately in a loving way with people that are experiencing the struggle of finding their way out of the box with the perceived authority figure has them in, or they've put themselves in, and to wake up.
And here's the interesting thing. Like, my observation of the strategy is, if you look at the retail store as the point, we'd be wrong. But if we look at what is demonstrated today as your mission, and your love for connection, and your love for community, and your love for like presentation and information, like you love to put people in a position to share everything they've learned and to do this stuff, like the retail store is like a platform for that.
It was, yeah.
Right? Like it definitely had a point. It's just not the point we thought it was. And had we acknowledged what the real point was, we might have chosen a more economically efficient platform sooner.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm an example of one of those clients who was really difficult to get through to.
I'm patient. I mean, listen, and again, I'm not attached. I have no judgment. I'm not, I mean, fuck, we all get to learn and grow.
Yeah.
Our own way. Like,
I look back, if you don't mind me just sharing, I look back and I see that, in some ways how dishonest I had been with myself, and how resistant I had been to it not being a certain way, and it was, what an opportunity, what such a blessing it had been, that I ended up, sleeping in that store for a year and a half or so, and all of those things to finally crack the shell and and realize that you know, this is where I am serving. This is not even where I want to serve. This is where I've been always destined to serve. And so I love how it happened. And it also gives me compassion for others who are in the struggle of, you know, wanting it a certain way that's outside of their true value, and how persistent we can be in that pursuit. Because I lived it.
I mean, when we don't understand the strategy, it's hard to, you know, do like, the thing is, it had a point, it had a reason. And so if someone were to come in and be like, this is stupid, shut it down, your awareness, like your consciousness goes like, I can't just shut it down. There's a point to this, right? There is a point to this. There's absolutely a reason for this. The question is in just like, is the order fucked up? Is my perceived hierarchy of priority screwed up? Am I making this the end and this the servant? Like, what are the masters and the servants in the right order in the hierarchy? And in that case, like, you were working for the store wasn't working for you.
Yes.
Right. But that doesn't mean the store wasn't part of the point. It's just, it takes us time to have the language, or to have the right question, or to have the environmental factors in place for us to see clearly ourselves. I think that it's easy for us to get on a call and for me to say, just do your values. It's a very nuanced, like, knowing oneself is the fucking point of this.
Yes.
So for us to even imagine like, oh, Alex snaps his fingers and does his values determination and now he knows himself. I mean, that's equally delusional. It's a game of vector. It's a game of like right action. It's a game of trying, at least in any moment, to be as present as we can be with what's true and authentic to us, not knowing all the details, but like being able to tune in and at least with our direction tack towards the mission. Like, we're not going to go in a straight line. So like, it's not like the journey is the point, but like the journey plays a part of the story. So we have to be open to a conversational relationship with the universe. Like, this isn't let's just imagine, right? Oh, I figured out who I am. What next?
Shazam.
Like, okay, I guess the game's over, right? The end credits roll. Like, where do we go? So in part, it's like, I'll never know myself. There's infinite degrees of knowing oneself. And in this moment, who am I? I mean, we could have philosophy class about.
So that is the big question, though. And who am I? Tell me who you are. And that, you know, that using that, it's the question that I speak about every day on these calls is you know, are we looking inside? And I recommend certain teachers to people, you know, even Eckhart Tolle and Hawkins, of course, Dr. David Hawkins, and I've really been enjoying Ram Dass, you know, this last while, and Alan Watts, and our friend John DeMartini. You know, they've all created and they've all created the opportunity for us to see the questions. You know,
and you are,
mm-hmm.
And you are,
and I am
creating the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and yes, and that is it feels like it's my mission, you know, and to create the opportunity and to share my experience and my journey of coming to this space. I just want to share with you that last fall, I was with, do you remember Trevor Thibodeau?
Yes, he's on the stream right now.
Trevor leads a thing called Enlightenment Intensive.
Yeah.
which I had resisted for 25 years. I had done a little bit of it in Bali in '94. I'd done like an afternoon of the question, and the koan. The question is called a koan, and the question is, tell me who you are. And my body had a physical reaction. I remember I had to crawl out of the room. I couldn't, literally, and I said to myself 25 years ago, I'll never do that again. And it took 25 years for me to get back to that question. And it's an amazing question. And we did 3 16-hour days plus a couple of half days on either end of the dyads. And day 2, almost the end of day 2, and all of the story was gone. I had this amazing experience of nowness, of isness, of emptiness, of the stillness, and it was something that I've been kind of looking for all my life, whether it was through journey work like you were just talking about, which and I've looked in, I've turned over a lot of rocks looking for this stillness, and when it happened in the Enlightenment Intensive, and I'd recommend everybody do this, a 3-day or a 7-day Enlightenment Intensive. And when it happened there, I could see how I had been there before, but hadn't recognized it, and it was like, oh, this is it. And
here I am.
Here I am.
It's funny, right? Like, oh, here I am. It's very strange.
I know. So I think now that everybody can have that, but like you say, there's the journey. It doesn't have to be a terribly long journey. There's no rule that says it's this. It could take 10 years or there's nothing nothing can be said about that. We think, though, of course, our ego says, well, I have to study these teachers for 25 years, or I have to apprentice with this guru or whatever.
Yeah, then I'm worthy. I'm worthy. I've checked boxes and there's a certificate.
Yes. And none of that's true. The possibility, or I have to meditate for 2 hours a day at 4 a.m. For 22 years.
Yeah, of course. If you don't get up at 4 a.m, you're never going to be a billionaire.
Well, it's interesting that all of the searching for all of those years, for me, I recognized was I wanted to get something. And it wasn't, what ended up happening is after I lost everything was that there I was, there wasn't getting anything. It was being something, and or not even being something, recognizing the being, the beingness, but I had all these years thought that I wasn't good enough, and that I had to improve myself enough to be worthy, if you will. And
the interesting thing about getting things is that it doesn't acknowledge what we have. I've sort of observed that I've been working through this. I part of me loves the tangibility and the science that helps me create meaning around these concepts. And so I create these images and these models for like how I see the universe working. And some of this I've received from my teachers, and some of it I've created out of my intuition or whatever. But what I have sort of landed in the last 8 months in terms of how I communicate, how we go about getting things, because like a part of us is animal. Like I have within me a lion, and he wants to fucking devour a gazelle. Like I want to go hunt, man. I want to go kill shit and eat it. And I don't want to be eaten. Like I don't want to be. I want to avoid predators. Like I want to go out into the fucking savannah, and I want to become the king fucking lion. Like that nature is within me, and I'm choosing to honor it, right? And then there's the part of me that recognizes that there's this moment in The Lion King where right at the beginning when the dad lion is talking to Simba, and he's like, Simba, everything within this domain is like yours, type thing. right? I can hear his voice. It's like Simba, everything.
I
I think
remember
that it's
that.
like Earl Jones, something is the
Yeah.
actor's name. Uh, each of us at any given moment has within our domain a certain quantitative sum of resource. And each of us is organizing that domain in a particular way. You might have social influence or family or friends or a business or money or whatever. You've got your resources, I've got mine. And if I took all of your resources and all of my resources and I broke them down into particles, electrons, protons, and neutrons, I could count. I could count how many of those are there. And functionally speaking, you might have more than me, I might have more than you, and that would give us a sense of the size of our domain. And here's the thing, within the domain that we've got, I don't see us gaining or losing anything. We just rearrange the furniture. So we might think we want more money, but we're going to lose something else. We might think we want a bigger business. We might lose something else within our domain. Nothing is gained or lost. It's just going to transform. So then the question is, how do I grow my domain? Like, what is the point of getting anything except what would expand the domain? So what I'm coming to terms with is I can rearrange furniture all day long. Totally acceptable. You get a new couch, move your shit around. It's perfectly fine. But don't delusionally believe you're going to somehow gain a surplus within your domain without something else occurring. And the something else that I think must occur is growth. And I think that when I grow, when I accumulate a unit of growth, my domain expands. And in the expansion of that domain, I'm going to end up with more particles. I'm going to end up with more furniture. And I can move that furniture around and I can put it to use and I can do whatever I fucking want to do with it. But make no mistake, the point of that furniture isn't for my ego to be like, look at how many fucking couches I have. The point of that is to give me more resources to foster more growth, which would then expand my domain. So if we find ourselves seeking, I'll just speak for myself. If I find myself seeking anything but growth, I am in an illusion. And that's my ego. That's not my true function. That's me. I've become attached. I've become distracted. I've created a fantasy. I'm avoiding a nightmare. I think that I'm king shit lion and I'm going to somehow eat a gazelle without a predator. I've got some psychology that I've delusionally resubscribed to my game. And again, I think this all looks very real. And I have to work really hard at this. I think everyone does. I can just speak for myself. Like when I wake up to that, it's like every time I'm like, whoa, like here I am again. I bought into the game. Like I don't want more money. I want to grow. I don't want more relationships. I want to grow. I don't want more influence. I want to grow. If we remember that growth is the point, for me, it's become an anchor that helps me extract myself from the game of my mind and extract myself from the game of my ego. And when I remain present with growth and I can be back in my body and I can feel my feelings and get present in time and in space, here I am again. It's like, oh, right. I went and I played the game, but as always, here I am again, back at myself. And I was here all along. So, I mean, these things help me as like a spiritual psychonaut. Like I want to go exploring, and these are tools I have in my tool belt that I think I'm learning to apply really effectively in getting out of the game and getting out of my attachments and getting out of the perceived very real reality.
To,
And as I do it, I get more adaptable.
would you call consciousness the same as growth? I want your
Yeah.
pointing towards more growth is the same as pointing towards more consciousness?
The vision that I have for consciousness is like a sphere of light. And as I grow, that sphere expands.
Yes. Yeah.
And the I that is growing is not the I, which is my ego. Like I am a servant to that growth, which is, I think, also brings a humble energy. Like it was there before I was here, and it'll be there when I'm gone.
Absolutely. You must be. You've been listening to Muji.
Yeah. I think a lot of this is remembrance.
Yes.
All learning is recollection. I think I'm good at putting models and words to these types of things, and I don't know where that came from, but that sphere is not who I am. I'm a servant. I'm a servant to that.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Really, sincerely, thank you. I wouldn't have imagined we get here in this conversation. Thank you. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's,
As you can tell, I love this shit. My business is totally a proxy to this conversation. Like,
yes.
I used to think my business was all very real and important, and it is, and it helps people, but unless it helps them grow, it means nothing. So, like, all the shit my business does is great, and the growth that results from that is really what I care about. So I choose to play the yes, I get it, your website is very important game, and your video is very important, and your funnel is very important, and let's not get lost in the weeds. Let's remember why we're here. I want to make sure we grow.
Beautiful. That's amazing. I would, we could almost end on that. I'm have a vision of kind of being a little under an hour, so we can, I've been putting these up on Instagram and all of that. But what a beautiful
Great.
conversation. Thank you.
Yeah.
And,
Thanks for creating the space, which you have done for as long as I've known you.
yeah, thank you so much. And I've always been in your corner, and not that you've needed anybody in your corner. It's just that I've watched your journey and love what you're doing, and that we were able to get to where we just did in this conversation is beautiful for me. I mean, obviously, this is this is my value. This message that you just shared, and beautiful. I think we may clip this out a bit and have you can
Great.
use this if you want. I can send you this if you want to use it.
Please.
Anyway, because we recorded this. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And is there? We'll put your website up if you'd like. And I mentioned some authors. Anybody that you want to add? Any names that you're have been your teachers?
Interestingly enough, I would refer back to yourself. I mean, my recommendation would be that we take time and go within. And God damn, it sounds so cheesy. It's so funny. I read these things earlier in my life, and I'm like, wow, that's bullshit. And I catch myself now saying them. We need information to create meaning in our minds, but what I think is most needed now than ever is to go within the body. So much of what we do, so much of our impulse and instinct is to avoid what we're feeling in the body, and the body is a teacher. And so I would go within the body. I would create space to go, not even meditation. I'm not talking like meditation, all that shit. I'm saying sit and be present and go into your feet. Feel your feet. Are they sore? Feel your calves. Feel your shins. Feel your thighs. Feel into your gut. Are you holding your stomach in? Are you pushing forward your chin? Are you clenching your jaw? Are you doing weird shit with your hands? Are you flexing your forehead? Are you storing tension in the body? And are you doing that to avoid feelings? And what happens when you go within those feelings? What thoughts come up? What concerns emerge? What questions do you have? And become your own teacher. I'm not saying don't subscribe to others. I'm just saying there's a teacher here that so many people are ignoring. I've ignored it for a long time. And so I'm learning to listen. I would recommend that people sit at the feet of that master once in a while.
Thank you. Love you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.